Today, what you've got to hear
I'm listening.
is if you want to build a life you love, you and your partner cannot be competitors. Instead, you must aim to be complementarians of one another and champion a common goal.
Today's episode, we are going to tackle the topic that's probably the question we get asked the most frequently. How in the world do you do all of the things that you do, shoulder to shoulder, face to face, and heart to heart, with your spouse?
How do you work with your spouse?
Together? How do we do it?
If it's not the top question that we get, it's definitely the top comment that we get is, oh my gosh, I could never work with my spouse. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, we've been doing it for 20 years
20
now,
years.
though. 20 years. And 21 and a half-ish if you count just working at the same place. We weren't married, but we've been doing this for a long time now. Long time.
That's right.
Years.
So we got married at the ripe old age of 20. Just a little backstory. I know some of our listeners are just now getting to know us.
Yeah.
We are just 41 years old, and we met when we were 18. I moved across country, one state over. It felt like a country.
It was a big state, though. It was a big
state. Moved from
state.
Texas, where I met him over the phone, to Louisiana, where he's from. We dated a year and a half, and at the age of 20, we thought we were just grown, and we got married.
Grown
and
as we were
we've been
gonna
married
get.
20 years now.
Yep.
And when we moved, I was going to be a marriage and family therapist. I was in school at LSU to become a sociologist, and then I was going to go get a master's in marriage and family therapy. Tyler was in working on his business degree, and then shortly after that, we started volunteering at our church, and that's how we got into ministry in the first place. I volunteered in a sports ministry. He volunteered with kids ministry.
Kids and youth, and we got married.
Bam.
There was a week in between our wedding and our honeymoon. And in that week, our pastor called us in and said, our boss, right? Staff. He said, hey, congratulations on your wedding. Enjoy your honeymoon. When you guys get back, you're going to be our junior high youth pastors. And so we literally started our marriage, our life, our ministry, our career, our everything, all at the same time, all from right out of the gate. We shared a car, we shared a house, literally just one. We had one of everything. We had one car, we had one house. I mean, that sounds so ridiculous to say, but yes, we had one house. We had one office, one desk. It wasn't even two desks. It was one big table, and they gave us a single laptop computer. One. We shared it all.
And since then, we've just been building this life as now we're a team real estate agent with Keller Williams. We are co-pastors together. We have started childcare centers together. We've just worked shoulder to shoulder.
Yep.
And so we want you to walk away from our table after this episode resourced for teamwork with your spouse. We hope after this episode, you'll understand the full pros and cons of working with your spouse, learn some of the rhythms of life that you're going to need to adopt in order to be successful going after your common goals. We want you to understand some of the struggles you'll face, and we want you to be equipped to create boundaries so that your romance doesn't burn out. And even if you're listening and you're not married, listen, you can still get something out of this episode. Our goal is to equip you with some solid principles that will propel you towards greater unity and efficiency with whomever it is that you'll collaborate with on a daily basis. And the reason that we're so passionate about this podcast is because we want to help you defy limitations and really go after what's in your heart to do. And so if you want to break that glass ceiling that's over your head, that's created by your 9 to 5, listen, you're going to have to start something new. You're going to have to take on, more responsibility at work. You're going to have to, start that new side hustle, or take on that new investment. Maybe you've got to start a whole new career. But if you do that and you're married, both partners in the marriage are going to have to be committed to this goal and be good teammates, because so often a real limitation that holds people back from achieving the more in their heart is their partner or the people in their life that ought to be propelling them towards more. So listen.
That's right.
Today, what you've got to hear is if you want to build a life you love, you and your partner cannot be competitors. Instead, you must aim to be complementarians of one another and champion a common goal.
That's great. We're going to tell you how we've fallen into this competitive trap before. But before we dive in, if you could do us a favor, if you find anything in this podcast that speaks to you in this episode or in previous episodes, hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend, rate it and review it on whatever podcast source you subscribe to. Trust us, sharing not only supports us, but it might just be the encouragement that somebody else needs today. All right, so since our audience is still getting to know us a little bit, we'll let you in on a little bit of the color of the backstory here of who we are, where we come from. When we came up right out of the gate, 20, 21 years old, the culture and the environment that we were in, we were on staff at a church, and I would say it's probably not a ton different from a corporate structure. So if you're not in a ministry or a faith-based sort of background, I think this is applicable to everyone. But the culture that we came out of, it had kind of different set of rules for the males in the culture and the females in the culture.
And honestly, that's true for wherever you live in the country.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Gender norms and expectations.
South, north, east, west, international, everywhere. I feel like that's probably the case. And so there was one set of expectations for me as a man in that culture. There was another set of expectations for Crystal as a female in that expectation, in that culture. And we were both so young. It was like we knew that both of us didn't meet those expectations, but we were, again, so young. We didn't know what to do with it. Right?
And I remember when we were dating before we got married, I remember us having a conversation. I remember saying, hey, I want to be a marriage and family therapist. I want to be in an office all day. I want to have work hours. Are you okay with that? I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I remember you saying, of course I'm okay with that. My mom worked. It was so normal. You and I had already set that expectation of what our life was going to be like. Right. But then when we jumped into church world, there's all of these perceived gender expectations and roles, and even more so in the church. Yeah,
and so when we started our big, bold faith adventure, right? The move that was the catalyst behind all of the things that we talk about on this podcast of leaving the place that was comfortable and familiar to us into the unknown. We went through this process of assessment with an organization that was kind of supporting us and a little bit behind us, but just to make sure we were the right fit for the job. And I remember when we were going through that assessment process, not being secure enough in myself and not being secure enough in us as a team at that point in our marriage, and just being like, hey, so look, when we start this church, when we begin this journey, we got to really make sure we're clear and comfortable about some things. And what I did from a place of insecurity was I put expectations on you that were they were impossible expectations because they were the opposite of who you are.
But let's back up a little bit. Let's give the listener some understanding. So we go through this church planting assessment, right? Mm-hmm. And part of the assessment is they're assessing, are you the right leader, the lead pastor, and does he have the appropriate partner, right? The right lead pastor's wife. And so they take us into a room. I will never forget. They take us into this room. It's a tiny room. There's 2 chairs, and then there's a 3rd chair for the assessor to come in and talk with you. And it's kind of like this podcast studio. You feel like the lights are shining down on you. Yes. And I remember he came in, and the first question he asked us was, Tyler, tell us about your communication style. When you're behind the pulpit, what's your communication style? And I remember you kind of being because you're such a naturally humble, you'll kind of self-deflect. You were
Aww.
And you said, oh, well, Crystal's the better preacher of us both.
It's still true.
You've always been so kind to propel me forward. And you said, well, Crystal's the better preacher. And I remember that guy's face, because we're being assessed, and maybe we read it wrong, and maybe that's not. But I remember that insecurity. I remember the face that I read, that I perceived that was the wrong answer.
It was the honest answer.
It was, and so I kind of jumped in and I said,
"Is that okay?"
I said, "Oh, Tyler's a great preacher. He's just more like a teacher, and I guess I'm more like a preacher." Do you remember this conversation?
I don't at all. No.
And that sent us to our hotel room.
Yeah.
Both feeling. I remember the ride back to our hotel room after that was.
Oh, I remember that.
So,
no, I'm going to forget that. That's for sure.
Because we got into a huge fight.
Yeah, it was nasty.
Tell the people about that.
Well, I don't remember all the details.
Because now we laugh
but it was
about
like,
it.
Yeah, I was like, I guess from that same insecurity, I was like, hey, look, I'm going to need you to be okay in the back seat for a while. I'm just going to need you to come along for the ride, like sugar pie, honey bunch. I'm just going to need you to just get on the train and ride it into the station.
I remember
and you just be pretty and helpful. I didn't say these words,
no,
but like
what you did say was, I'm going to need you to be okay. I remember you said, I'm going to need you to be okay if I ask you not to speak in our church for a year, the first year. I'm going to need to know you're okay with that. And I remember looking at this husband who I had been married to for 7 years at this point, going, who are you? Yeah. Like, what in the world? Are we in 1957 right now? Like, who is this? So we got into this huge fight, and it wasn't anything that had to do with you and I as teammates. Correct. It was trying to conform to the social expectations that we were perceiving all around us. Right. You know, any success that we have experienced in our life is 99% attributable to God Almighty himself.
Yeah, he's graced us. Absolutely.
But I think the other 1% is that we decided to get out of his way
let him do
and be intentional to learn how to operate as the one unit that he intended us to live as. We decided really early on, pretty much that moment, as we state in our real estate marketings, our signs actually say this, that we are Team Tullos.
Better together and better for you. So cheesy, but it's good.
For real.
It's true too.
We decided back then, you know, some people call it we're power couple. We've heard say that. We like to think of it as we're a purposed couple.
I love that.
We're not a power couple. We're a purposed couple. We've got a purpose. So this begs the first kind of question that if you're really figuring out, like, how do I work with my spouse, that you've got to ask yourself, why are we together? Why are we together? What is our joint purpose as one? You know, so many of us, we get together for different reasons, but you have to ask yourself, have you ever considered that question? Like, why, out of all of the people in the world that I could have linked up with, why are me and him, or him, you know, me and she together? What is our common person? Have you ever sat down and wrote a corporate vision and mission statement for your union? Like, have you ever thought about, if we're a team and we're playing this game, what is the objective of our game? And if we're going to win, where's the end zone? And how are we going to score? That's good. You have to think about your marriage like this, because here's what we know from sports, from the sports analogy, that if you are running different plays and you're not working together as a team, if you're not playing with intention and discipline and purpose with one heart and one mind, then you're not gonna lose.
That's right.
You're not gonna win.
Yeah, and I don't know about y'all, but I like to win. I don't want to lose.
All I do is win.
I don't play to lose. We play to win. So for us, listen, our vision and mission as a team, as unified teammates, partners in all of this is a little bit what it looks like. Together, we're creating and fulfilling a death till us part marriage that reverses the patterns of the generations before us and creates an example for our future, our legacy to follow. We're raising kids to be leaders and not followers, to be the head and not the tail, to be above and not below, and to be more than conquerors in Jesus' name.
So cute. He prays that prayer over our kids every single day. It's awesome.
They love it.
Way to go, Dad.
The younger ones still do. The old ones are not into it anymore.
Dad, yeah.
But we're shepherds that serve and love people with all our hearts. We exist to build a local church, creating communities for people to find and know Jesus Christ. Everything else that we do around that, our marketplace ventures, We do that to create wealth so that we can fund the work of the kingdom and the advancement of the church and leave a legacy for our kids and grandkids to enjoy life to the fullest, an inheritance for 2 generations. That's what the Bible calls a good man. And we believe that our mission and our vision is to be pioneers and paving the way for others to follow faster, which is why we're talking to you on this podcast right now. Because you've got to hear this, guys. You can do this, and you can do it together. You can go farther, faster when you're working in unity, when you have the same mission, the same vision, the same heart towards the same goal. It's really a recipe and a formula to make a huge difference.
And it's important to know that, at 20 years, right, we've kind of like mastered this. But at year 1, we didn't. At year 5, like Rome wasn't built in a day, right? And so you may be just starting out and you're like, yeah, I want that for my marriage. I want us to have purpose. Or maybe you're so far into your marriage and you've never lived this way that you think there's no way that we can redo all the past. Listen, I'm just telling you, your story, it may not be gushy like ours. Good grief, you could just be together because you got knocked up and, you just made a choice to do the right thing and stay together. You might be listening to this and your marriage may be on the fritz right now. And I'm just telling you that it is possible to be on total opposite ends of the spectrum, to not be on the same page, but to sit down and to make a choice together one day at a time. You may have to get a little help. You may got to get in that marriage therapy office. We've had to do that. You've got to make some decisions to start some new behaviors, to start some new patterns, to change the way you think, to reframe the way you see each other. Yeah. But it is possible to get on the same page and to start acting as one team. It all starts, if you want to build a life that you love, you and your partner cannot be competitors.
Doesn't work.
Instead, you must aim to complement and champion a common goal.
That's good.
So let's talk about the pros and cons, Tyler, of working through the challenges with your spouse, refusing to be competitors, and instead choosing to complement one another and champion the common goal. I mean, let's talk about that, because we've been doing this 20 years, and if we are portraying in any ways that it is easy, that we never fight.
I don't ever fight.
Yeah, you do. You start the fights.
It's only a fight if there's somebody who loses, and I never lose. That means I only win.
You see what I'm dealing with here, people.
Is that how it works?
That's right. So listen, we're telling you it is a struggle. Of course. Right? If you're gonna start anything with your spouse.
It's a worthy struggle.
But it's a worthy struggle.
That's right.
And so we want to talk to you. There's so many pros about working with your spouse, about taking on a joint project together. Things like enhancing communication to increase trust, more flexibility in your family, more emotional support, and even more quality time together, as backwards as that might sound. But the number one pro that you need to know that comes from choosing to truly partner with your spouse and not compete against one another is that you have someone that's truly out to maximize you.
What does that mean?
Truly out to maximize you.
What do you mean?
In every other setting, right? Whether you're like at your workplace or even like in a men's soccer league or something.
Pickleball.
We do play pickleball a lot, right? At the end of the day, like in any other setting, you have people that like you. You have people that are working with you. But the one advantage, like the one pro of like working with your spouse and truly getting this principle down of, hey, I'm not going to see you as a competitor. I'm going to see you as who I'm one and I'm equal with, and you are actually my partner in life, right? I'm going to compliment you. I'm going to champion you. We're going to work on the same goal. When you have that mindset, the potential that you have is this person will maximize every best feature that you bring to the world. In every other setting, at the end of the day, you're actually competing with your coworkers. Like when there's a promotion to be had, make no mistake, that person that you call friend every day or colleague together, they're going to step on you as fast as they can to get to the top, because at the end of the day, everyone is out for their self-interest.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't make them bad. It's just the way humans are wired. But if you'll learn to partner with your spouse, you have this ability to be with someone, right, who's not going to step on you to advance themselves, because at the end of the day, that would only be hurting themselves.
That's really good.
So this is the pro, and there's a section of the Bible that we love that talks about this very thought. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. It says this, it says, 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken.
That's great.
I love that back to back. This is that exponential power. If you will get this principle and reframe looking at your spouse as not someone that's pulling you down, if you will choose to stop stepping on them so that you can get to the top and see them as a gift to you, we're telling you, you can move mountains.
That's right.
You can move mountains.
I thought you were going to point out verse 11 as the key there. 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm, but how can one be warm alone?
Yeah.
Because you've been putting your cold feet on me now for 20 years
It's true.
to stay warm. But no, silly. But one of the key words you just said, Crystal, was a champion. Like as your husband, as your spouse, as your partner, as your teammate, as your all of those words. I am not your cheerleader. I feel like it's my job to be her champion. You don't need somebody, or you don't need to be the person that's on the sidelines being like, go girl, like spirit sprinkles. I love you. You're doing great. Like go team. Like you need somebody like in the Old Testament, like the armies of the Old Testament, those big, great battle stories that you read in the Bible. They would sometimes just simplify the process, and each army would just send out someone identified as their champion. And the 2 champions would fight, and that would be on behalf of everyone else. So when it comes to Crystal, I'm not her cheerleader, I'm her champion. And I'm going to walk out in front of whatever quote unquote army may be coming against her. And I'm going to see if I can just head that off at the pass so that she can then continue to advance and expand and grow and become the maximum version of her that God created her to be.
And let's put this into context for everyone listening today. You may never go into business with your spouse. You may never be pastors together, real estate agents together. But here's what can happen. Here's what we're talking about. Here's what we see a lot. Here's couples we see and sit down with. Here's what we witness. You've got 2 people that have 2 sets of dreams. One sets out to be, a top, in a financial, in the financial world. You've got another person in the marriage who has this dream to be a top attorney, right? And so you come in, you fall in love, you get together, and you decide to be partners in life. But at some point, your careers require sacrifices. You put kids in the mix, and now whose turn is it to stop what they're doing at work and go get little Timmy from school? Or whose turn is it to sleep in so the other one can get to work on time? Or, you have all of these moments in your marriage where you have a chance to compete with one another to get to your dream. And what we're saying to you is you've got to figure out how to make your dream their dream, and vice versa. Because if you don't, you will always see that spouse of yours as someone who is detracting from your ability to get to where you're going. And what we're saying to you is your spouse is not a detractor. If you will reframe the way you look at them, they will actually help you get where you're going, where you're trying to get, and you can help them go where they're trying to get. But if you guys do not come into an agreement that we're going to be of one heart and one mind, and what's best for you is what's best for me, and if I have to sacrifice, I know you'll sacrifice, and we're going to do this together. your marriage is not going to end well. We see this happen a lot because husbands and wives, they see each other as competitors. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we expect one another to make certain sacrifices based on gender norms, based on gender expectations. And I'm just saying, I think there's a better way.
Yeah.
There's a third option. And I think those things are possible for you.
Yeah. So then that's a perfect segue. What's the other side of the coin? What's the con, right?
There are cons.
Yeah. And in future episodes, we'll talk about how overcoming some of the challenges of working with your spouse, like the limited or oftentimes non-existent separation between work life and personal life, conflicts,
and not having anything to talk about if work is off the table. Yeah,
power struggles, dealing with loss of independence, professionalism, all of those things. We'll get to all of that. But what it comes down to as a bottom line is the biggest con is you can't run and hide. Like there's nowhere to go.
It's true.
There's nowhere to go.
And not even like there's nowhere to go, like we are together. But I think more like introspectively, what we mean by that is you have to do the soul work to take off all your masks and all your incongruencies to become your most authentic, healthy self. Wow. Because when you work with your spouse, who knows you better than anyone else.
Why are you looking at me so intently right now? Could you direct some of that at the camera,
because
please?
you've had to see my most unhealthy versions. And there's no hiding from that. Like your spouse is a mirror. And when you work every day, it is very difficult to become that. So you've got to choose to love every aspect of yourself, even the bad and ugly. And if you will choose to show up every single day trying to improve from yesterday, this challenge, it can become your greatest opportunity.
It's good.
Because we're saying it again, you've got to hear it. If you want to build a life you love, then you've got to see your spouse not as a competitor, but as a complement to your life, working to champion a common goal together.
Okay, so Crystal, let's bring it home here, babe. All right, if you're gonna work together with your spouse, if you're gonna be unified champions, pros and cons, all those things. What are some of the rhythms and the boundaries that people need to put in place? What are some of the rhythms and boundaries that we've seen as working rhythms and boundaries that have made us successful?
Yeah, I mean, because there's going to be multiple opportunities every single day to be competitors. I mean, whether you're working on that new dream house together, building plans, or whether you're trying to figure out who's going to pick up the kids when, who's making lunches, who's got to clean up the house at the end of the day. I mean, there are multiple opportunities, regardless of what kind of business you're in together.
Correct.
Just running a family, managing your life.
Right.
There are multiple opportunities to become competitors. I mean, just yesterday, Tyler, you and I, or 2 days ago, we got into a huge fight about who had to stop and drive across town to pick up our son. It was like, you were in the middle, I think, of writing a sermon. I think I was in the middle of writing this podcast episode.
A lot of writing.
We're working on content, and all of a sudden we're like, it's 4:30.
He's getting back from field
trip. Who's picking him up? And you called me and you were like, I need you to go get him. And I was like, why do I have to go get him? I mean, we have had so many of these fights over the years, right? And when you're stressful, it gets even worse.
There was a good reason.
Well, of course. I mean, I'm not trying to make you look bad. I'm just saying.
I just want to make sure we clarify. Like, I wasn't just being like a super jerk. Sometimes I can be, but that time maybe not.
So the way we've learned to get around all of that, right? Because you're going to have those moments, is by establishing these necessary rhythms and boundaries. It's crucial, right? It's crucial by kind of just raising a family, working together, being spouses. Here are some necessary rhythms to consider. One of the things you and I do is just having like communication routines. So normally I was sick this week. And so the reason that fight happened is because normally on Sundays, you and I, in the evenings, as we're kind of winding down and getting ready to start a new week, is we look at our calendar 7 days in advance, and we're talking about every day and kind of the intricacies of the week. And so you and I normally would have seen Peter's going to need a pickup at 5:30, which is different from our norm. How's he getting home?
Right.
And that fight would have been avoided. So I think that's a really important one. It's just regular check-ins, like almost like a family meeting, like you do at your work. You need to have that between your spouses as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Second one is like a work-life boundary. This is not new information. Everybody that's ever said anything about, well, anything will tell you that you got to have work-life boundaries, but especially if work and life is with the same person. Like you have to put those boundaries in place. Clear work hours. And it can't be, hey, I'm working here, deal with it, right? These are my hours, deal with it. It has to be a collaboration of, hey, this is when it works for our family. This is when it works for us as a couple, where we have the time for communication, where we have the time for non-work conversations.
I'm really bad at that. Like you like to work 9 to 5 ish, you know. Some days you'll go to 6 o'clock. I'm a workhorse. Like I would rather I'm like a workaholic. Like I would rather just work all day. Like as long as the job gets done and my to-do list gets checked off, that bothers you a lot because you like clear boundaries. Yeah. I'll be like 9 o'clock bringing up a whole new, it's taken me a lot to learn. Tyler needs, and your personalities are different, but Tyler needs, I
need a finish line every day.
You need a finish line every day.
I need to finish every day and then start the race again tomorrow.
And
it's important.
And I need to just be able to go. So again, it's learning.
You're a marathoner. She's a marathoner.
We're gonna work together here and meet each other's needs.
You can do it.
Another thing that we've decided is pretty important is clearly defined household roles. Yeah. So a long time ago, you know, I was trying to cook for Tyler all the time, like this little wife that cooked. And he would always have something to say, and not necessarily critical, but he would be like, hey, you should try this in that lasagna, or you should do this. And I was finally like, why am I cooking? I don't like it. I don't care. It's a waste of time to me. He actually enjoys it. So like way early in our life, I left the kitchen. I'll clean up. He cooks. I don't cook at all. He does not clean at all. And so we just decided, no, he'll take out the trash, those sorts of things, but really just doing what you're good at.
I do know where the sink is located though.
You do.
I feel like 20 years later, I can at least hit the sink with stuff, but I'm not great at the rest of it.
And then we've gotten to a point in our lives that really neither of us cook. We're kind of having to outsource that. You will get to a point, you'll know
for another episode.
You'll know when it's time to start outsourcing things. We wanted to eat better than just frozen pizza every night because that was what the time he had to cook was. And so you'll know that. But again, that's part of that rhythm of like at this season of life, what is it that we need so that we can stay in love, stay romantic, and not just be business partners.
Well, and that applies here to the next one, self-care routines. It's the same principle. It applies there, where, you know, everyone has their quote unquote me time for recharging, refreshing, all of those sorts of things.
What do you do for that?
Well, a little bit of pickleball these days. And then if it's the right season, I'll be like in the woods somewhere. I'm a man of the woods. Me and Justin Timberlake, we're kind of in the same category. We have a lot of the same skill sets, vocally, dance, choreography. Like we kind of have the same flow, but we're also men of the woods. I love being in the woods. That's just where I'm. And I'll be honest,
this is where we struggle because for self-care time for me, I need quality time with my man. Like I want to go to the movies.
It doesn't count.
Like I want to go to lunch, but you only have so much time off. And here he is needing time in the woods. And this is what I mean about you got to do soul care because you can't run and hide. And if my abandonment issues start coming up, my childhood trauma or whatever, and I'm like, you don't want to be with me? And he's like, we have been together all week long. And I'm like, no, we haven't. Not really. We've just been working. What am I, just your business partner? I'm your lover.
The answer to both of them is yes. You're both of those things, and that's why
we've gotten into that fight a lot.
So important.
Had to get to my therapist's office and really deal with those issues.
It's helped though.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Got to do that work. No. All right. So, let's talk about date nights. Oh. How do you have date nights? Okay, let's just help the listener right now.
Or maybe the listeners can help us.
Maybe they can help us. But let's talk to the ones who have little kids right now. Because I remember hearing older couples when our kids were like,
gotta keep a date
babies,
night.
like, you ought to go on a weekly date night. And you're like, okay, I don't have money to go on a weekly date night. And then you read these blogs, they're like, oh, well, date nights don't have to cost a lot. And you're like, I would rather just be in bed. I'm tired. I don't want to go lay in the back of a pickup truck and watch stars tonight for free. Like,
that's very West Texas of you to say
the
that.
bloggers will tell you to do that for free. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
what blogs are you reading?
Well, you don't read blogs anyways, but what do you think about date nights? Like give the people practical advice about creating those date nights.
I think it has to be a balance, right? It can't just at least for me, if it becomes another thing on my schedule, that's another thing that I have to do, which a to-do for me is a job. And a date to me shouldn't be a job. A date to me shouldn't be a task. A date should be something that I look forward to. And so I understand the value of a routinely planned and intentional time away from work with the most important person on the face of the planet to me. But for me, I don't like it to be so routine and so task oriented. Like we've got to check this off of our list. Good. I enjoy a spontaneous sort of thing. I enjoy hey, after we record this podcast episode, you want to go get some chips and salsa? Check, right? Like we didn't plan that. That just happened. But I will tell you, happened.
I love when you do plan. Like he's really silly and talk about gender norms, but like he'll show up at our front door and like ring the doorbell with like a bouquet of flowers and be like, "Can you go get ready? I'd like you to take you to dinner." And I'm telling you, that makes all the difference out of a monotonous week where we've been making decisions or we've been getting in fights or we see things we don't, we're taking our business in a different direction. We don't agree. That puts the spark back in it. So that's
and there's a
difference
between making a plan and having it planned.
True.
Right? And I think that's what we're talking about.
That's truth.
Keep going.
And then the last one to kind of wrap up this, just talking about some healthy routines, some healthy rhythms, talk about boundaries, having a technology-free zone. This is crucial. And I'm talking about the Apple Watch you wear. I'm talking about the cell phone that you have. You've really got, like when you are on those date nights or when you're just on your couch at the end of the night, you've got to shut the outside world off so that you can just have time for quiet. Mm-hmm. So that you can have time. We do that like in the mornings. We both read our Bibles. That's like important for us. It's part of our faith. You might meditate, whatever it is that you do. But you've got to have time where you just have stillness around you. That's whatever profession you're in. You need stillness. You need quiet. And turning off those cell phones, just getting book, pen, and paper in front of you, that's a really good routine and a healthy boundary that you can set.
Absolutely.
So listen, it is possible to take on more, to take on that next venture, to go after that goal, to earn more, to build and live a life you love. It is possible, but I'm telling you, it's all in the systems and the culture that you create. Just like anything, it's all about systems and culture. And if the culture that you've created in your marriage is one of competition and your rhythms are chaotic, you're not going to get anywhere good fast.
That's good, man.
I'm just telling you that. You will be stuck as living as victims of your circumstance, like a hot mess. Your marriage is a hot mess. Your kids will be a hot mess. Your finances will be a hot mess. And you'll be like, what is this? And this is why so many people give up, because you're not being intentional with your marriage and with your family and with your life like you are with your career. So you've got to bring those things into it. I just want to ask you a question. What would your life look like if you would choose to see each other as teammates and stop the competition? What would your life look like?
That's a great question, Crystal. And here's what we want you guys to do today. Here is your homework from this episode. You didn't know that listening to a podcast was going to give you something else to do, but this is going to be invaluable homework for you to do. I want you to go home. I want you to look at your spouse in the face. Look them in the face. Keep looking. Keep looking. I want you to see all their flaws. I want you to see all their faults. I want you to see all the places that they fall short. I want you to think back to all the times that they made you want to run your head through the sheetrock wall that was right there next to you. I want you to go back to all those times that you were tempted to call it quits. And then I want you to take all of those thoughts and I want you to reframe them. I want you to look at your spouse, your wife, your husband. I want you to look them in the face. And I challenge you And whatever it takes to get there, self-evaluation, meditation, prayer, faith, whatever it is, I want you to look at your person in the eyes, and I want you to look at them not as your competition, but as your cause to champion, to see them fulfill the maximum potential that they have to fulfill in their life. Don't look at them as your competitor. Look at them as your complement so that both of you can maximize.
And listen, if you're not married, you've got some homework as well. If you're dating someone, I want you to start this conversation now.
Smart.
Before you get married. Have the conversations. Is this the person that you want to marry? And if so, will they see you as their exponential potential partner? Like, will they see you as a competitor? Do you see them as a competitor? You need to be asking those questions now. Will you have the joint vision and mission statement? Even if you have separate careers, can you be in alignment with one common goal? And what are those goals? And if you're not dating someone, if you're just single, and this is still for you as well, I want you to think about who is it that you're collaborating with that you need better vision and mission, you need better collaboration with, and what is it that you can do to be a better partner to them, maybe a better teammate or a better coworker. This is really interpersonal skills we're talking about. What can you do? And even a better question that I think all of us can ask ourselves is, who can I offer my own life to help them achieve more? Jeez. Like, I think about all of our business partners. We were all, independently successful. We all probably could have gone about buying our first Airbnb house separately, had more profits together, but we decided to come together and be a team to fight the risk of what might happen to our relationships as friends, to fight the challenges, because we believed that being together was better than doing it alone. We believed we could do more together, that there would be people that have our back, that if the chips fell in the wrong direction, they'd be there to help clean up the mess. Right. And we believed it was worth that. And so I think about people like that who decide to pull resources together so that they can go faster and further. It's the same principle. You just have to learn to be willing to not compete with people and to join up and to partner with people.
That's right. So you've got to hear this. Here we go. If you want to build a life you love, you and your partner cannot be competitors. Instead, you must aim to complement and champion a common goal.
And to just kind of recap there, if you're going to do that, you've got to identify your joint purpose. You've got to write down your vision and mission. You've got to write it down, make it plain. You've got to, number 2, realize the exponential potential that you have that can truly maximize you. You've got plenty of limitations, but don't let each other be one of them. Number 3, be aware that you cannot run and hide. You've got to be ready to do the work to become the most authentic and healthy version of yourselves. Number 4, we talked about you've got to create necessary rhythms and boundaries. And 5, remember that Rome was not built in a day. What's taken us 20 years, we hope that you can implement in 20 months. But be patient with one another. Working together is an art and not a science. What we're going to do before we end this episode is we're both going to give you our biggest confession and tell you what's been our greatest individual weakness that we've had working together and teammates that we believe you need to hear. But before we get there, let me tell everyone that you can share your story with us and grab even more resources on this topic by heading to you'vegottahearthis.com, where you can join our mailing list, grab bonus content on each episode, and we invite you to sign up for your own coaching strategy call with us to maybe assess your marriage or assess your dating relationship. We're not therapists, but maybe we can give you some tips and some tricks on how to be more ready to work together. We're going to take on 5 couples who are ready to take a deep dive and be strategic to build a common vision and mission, but just need a little bit of coaching to do there. So you can book your coaching strategy call with us right there on our website. So, Tyler, before we sign off, give us the people your greatest confession. Where have you had to look in the mirror and say, you know what, if I'm going to be an actual teammate to my wife, here's what I've got to do better. And then I'll allow you to ask me that question.
Yeah. So it started a while back. I started correcting this, but it's a continual process. And that is the continual reminder that I have to be confident in who God created Tyler to be. And until I have confidence in what I am to be and who I am to be and what I am to do, I'll never be able to fully champion Crystal and what God has created her to be. So that's my confession is do the self-care work first, right? Inward, and then let it spill over external. Does that make sense?
And it's true. You've done that work, and I appreciate that.
You're worth it.
I appreciate that.
You were worth it and still are.
And my biggest confession, and I think maybe a lot of people, not just women, will identify with this, is I've had to give up control. Like I don't get to just control you, like as a team, as a wife. What I say does not always get to go, and it shouldn't, just because, I'm more organized or whatever. My biggest hurdle that I've had to overcome is not being so bossy. Yes, I'm strong, and yes, I'm independent, and yes, you've treated me as your equal and you see me as that. But because of that, I ought to honor and prefer and defer to you even more and give you space to be you and to do you and to operate as you and give you those boundaries as you need, even when I don't think it's the right way or it's not my way, and to really look myself in the mirror and say, why are you trying to control? What are you so afraid of? You don't need to be like this. You need to talk a little less, listen a little more. And that's hard introspective work that everybody has to do.
Absolutely. I feel like we just came up with a couple of more episode ideas right there.
Jot those down.
In those confessions.
Jot those down.
This has been good stuff. Hopefully you have enjoyed it, and we hope this episode has been helpful to you. In our next episode, we're going to tell you all about how we started a church in one of the least churched and most expensive zip codes in America. The next episode will be for anyone who feels like you're an underdog. You may never start a church, but you've got a dream that no one is behind, that everyone tells you is a ridiculous idea. This one is going to be for you. I want to thank you again for joining us. We're Tyler and Crystal Tullos. And in this episode of You've Got to Hear This, we look forward to welcoming you to our table the next time for more conversation. Until then, hear us as we declare over your life, you will defy every limitation and live a life that you love.